a poem by a poet I don't know or know very little about, and just have a first reading to enjoy that poet's work and to have the sheer enjoyment of poetry. This one I'm starting with J.P. White. I usually pick poems kind of randomly. This one I picked, or at least this poet I picked on purpose because somebody just sent me a book by this poet to review, and I don't know the poet's work. So I thought I could do a first read of this to just get a foothold into the person's work and go from there. J.P. White. Narrow, dead-end road. With any poem, I always look at the form first to see what I'm dealing with before I read it. So I look at this one, and the lines are different lengths, fairly long, fairly short. Doesn't look like a traditional form. It looks like open form, or what people call free verse. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Well, it's got 14 lines, so maybe this is a contemporary sonnet or of its own. We'll see once we get started. There is no rhyme scheme that I see jumping out to me at the end, so it is maybe it's just a reference to that 14 line, or maybe poet just gap there. Anyway, let's go from there. Narrow, dead-end road. Narrow, dead-end road. It's pretty heavy on the stresses right here in the beginning. It's a fairly strong title. There is a world on a narrow, dead-end road above the sea. So I like the flow of the language here. There's a dead. There's a world on a narrow. So it's very flowing. In the beginning, the meters coming out here. Just the kind of natural metered language. Dead-end road, and then it turns stressed there above the sea and comes back to a kind of calmer meter. There's a world in a narrow, dead-end road above the sea. So I don't know what to make right about this world on a dead-end road above the sea. Maybe we'll see when we get through a couple of lines. I would start to say it has this gentleness and harshness built into itself, because the kind of sound of the line, there's a world on a narrow, that's very gentle. Then we get narrow, dead-end road, which is harsh, and then it comes back to gentle again. Where you think you can always start over. No matter how old you've become. So it's a play on this idea that there's always a place you think you can start over when you get old. But it's narrow and it's a dead-end road above the sea. It's a dead-end road. Life is a dead-end road, as it is. But this one's above the sea. It's narrow. It's not much there, but you think it's there. You can think you can start over there. A world forgotten and always known. I'm not sure what to make of this, the world. Maybe this is some place this speaker remembers or thinks about, or thinks that we all have these spaces where we think we've known them, or we know they're there, or we want them to be there. It could be imagined, it could be real, but we think we can kind of start over no matter what kind of mess we've made of life. Just there, forever out of reach. But the forever out of reach thing is, the sweetness and the harshness, it looks like from that first line a little bit, that it's there. We think it's there, and we hope it's there, but it's always forever out of reach. That whole starting over thing doesn't quite happen so easily with all the pieces and piles of a life thrown up. And I stress that here because the speaker says no matter how old you've become, which is something an older speaker would say. It doesn't sound like a young person's poem. It sounds like something written by somebody who has some experience. This is where you imagine you would like to spend however many days you have left. Also sounds like something an older speaker would say. This is where you imagine you would like to spend however many days. It's like when you've done enough and you can kind of look back and see. But also that you want to start over in some ways. I think that's not uncommon for a lot of people. Inside a pocket of green, looking at a silver blue. Inside a pocket of green, that narrowness, that's this kind of green space, looking out silver blue, but it is a pocket, so it's contained, and it's looking out this sliver of blue. So it's not this whole huge view of it. It's just one small view of things. one feeding the other. So one feeding the other. The blue or the green or the just forever out of reach and wanting to get there. I'm not sure which one is feeding the other. I think sense of the speaker is playing off of like, yes, since you know it's there, you kind of keep going for hoping you can start all over. Well, knowing in some ways you can't, but also, this sense of looking out at the blue and seeing something. Like the island black tangfish who live out past the fallen iron pier. Well, it's like the narrow dead-end road, like the pier. They're playing off of each other, I think. The sense of this fish living out the end of the pier like a person living out there. And suck and scrape and eat the dirt, dead skin, and algae from shells of green turtles. The cleaning of one followed by the filling of the other. Suck and scrape and eat the dirt and dead skin. There's this kind of play that it's perhaps what a kingfish likes to do is, scrape and eat the dirt, dead skin, and algae. It's just a play off what we do ourselves from the shell of green turtles. These green turtles, like this green pocket or this narrow on the top of the hill, like living off the scraps of it. The idea of it, the idea of there being some way to start over when you screw up. Cleaning of one followed by the filling of the other. There's this sense of like cleaning off what's there and trying to go forward, trying to live this way, being filled by this thing that's forever out of reach. And the need to have things forever out of reach, to reach for, because we know things will end, even in our own kind of narrowness, narrow pocket of things. That's a first reading. I kind of think that's basically what's going on. I might change my mind though once like I said, I just got this book. I'm assuming this piece comes from the book. We'll see. So I'll see if that kind of matches how this poet reads things. It seems like this poet likes to do fairly narrative views of basic things and comment on them from this poem itself. Maybe that will change if I look at something else. Anyway, first reading of J.P. White.